Welcome back to New World Next Week. I'm James Corbett of CorbettReport.com.
And I am James Evan Pilato of MediaMonarchy.com. Without revealing more than we can say right now, there is a very interesting angle. We have got that mysterious story, plus social media guilty in addiction case. But first, who publishes digital health wallet rollout? The World Health Organization, that's who. The WHO, its Alliance for Health Policy and Systems Research, and the Singapore-based Temasek Foundation have launched a 3-year program to replace paper health records across Southeast Asia with digital health wallets. The stated purpose is to give people portable, verified access to their medical information. But this is the same WHO that spent the COVID pandemic building a global censorship apparatus with, of course, their good buddies in Silicon Valley pushing vaccine passport systems that restricted citizens' freedom of movement and amplifying Chinese authorities while demanding the power to, of course, police everyone else's speech. Like on this channel. The organization now wants to be trusted with the digital health records of hundreds of millions of people across ASEAN. James, do they pronounce it ASEAN, ASEAN? The Association of Southeast Asian Nations? I'm just going to say Asian.
I think they go with ASEAN, but whatever.
ASEAN. The program targets ASEAN member states, moving them from paper-based records like vaccination yellow cards. That's a World Cup dog whistle. And child health booklets to cryptographically verified digital wallets processed through WHO's Global Digital Health Certification Network, the terrible acronym of GDHCN. Countries will start with digital vaccination certificates. You got to start with the most important thing, then expand into routine immunization records, maternal and child health data, and eventually broader personal health summaries. You're difficult. Each phase widens the scope of what gets digitized, collected, and made verifiable across systems and borders, so it will increase exponentially as it grows. That system is now being repurposed and expanded well beyond its scope. Again, this is going to be for the COVID era, right? Into a permanent platform for digitizing all personal health information. Let's all place our bets now for when the story that says, oh, this has been hacked or you got leaked actually comes out. What started as emergency 9/11 pandemic infrastructure is becoming the default architecture for how governments manage their citizens' health data as if it is their business. During the pandemic, the WHO partnered with YouTube, Facebook, Wikipedia, and other platforms to censor or label COVID-19 content it deemed misinformation. YouTube alone deleted over 800,000 videos for contradicting the World Health Organization. Of course, also Corbett lost this YouTube channel. Many of those deletions targeted content that, turned out to be accurate, including claims about vaccinated people being able to transmit COVID and the possibility that the virus leaked from a laboratory. In related tax chattel news, cattle farmers say no to digital ID for cows. James, who will speak out for the human cows?
Yeah, that's the question. And it's not the WHO who will speak out. So exactly right. And when I saw these two stories cross my news wires at almost the exact same time, I thought, oh, there we go. We have to cover this precisely because it's the perfect metaphor. So yes, for the long story short, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency is proposing some new amendments that will basically put digital identification system in place for cattle ranchers and whatever. And the Canadian Cattle Association is coming out and saying they don't agree with that form of tracking because it's going to be essentially a digital ID for cows. But what is the WHO proposing? Essentially a digital ID for the tax cattle. And it's exactly what we were saying during the scamdemic times, exactly at the time, as you say, this channel was removed from YouTube for 3 or 4 years or whatever it was, because we dared to call this scam out for what it is, essentially the digital tracking, surveillance, and control of the human population under the guise of health emergency, of course. But what it is the thin edge of the wedge of the digital ID, panopticon, central bank digital currency, et cetera, system. That's what this is all about. It is about tracking and tracing and surveilling every cattle in the tax cattle system. And that is what we are to these people who want to steward over the entire planet. Well, as it turns out, there is an alternative that is being proposed to the WHO tax cattle management system that is being proposed by a group that's been put together by the Brownstone Institute. I'll put a link to it in the show notes if people are interested to check it out. It's at least a different idea of envisioning a world that's based on human health sovereignty rather than on, you are the tax cattle, we are going to ID you, and you better carry your ID around with you at all times. Papers, please, is not the way to manage the global human system, shall we say.
And as I've said, it's been tiring lately being right about everything we've talked about over the last 20 years. National IDs, worldwide blackmail, Epstein, Pizzagate. Oh, and I believe there was an early Corbett report that said World War III will start in Iran. That is how we get going on this New World Next Week, episode 625. I was just telling James when we were off mic, 16 years ago today, we were taping New World Next Week, episode 25. And we've grown and we've expanded like a trillion gene universe, mapping the trillion gene universe, the startup that wants to teach AI the language of life. From Bio IT World, James and I find some weird things in this article. It's either not from a native English speaker or possibly a little bit of AI help. Basecamp Research, the AI biology lab, has announced the Trillion Gene Atlas, a plan to collect genomic data for more than 100 million species across 31 countries, expand the known genetic universe by a factor of 100, and compress what it estimates would be 20 years of data processing into under 2 years. Trillion is not a hypothetically large number, said Glenn Gowers, co-founder of Basecamp Research. The Trillion Gene Atlas is scaling up and scaling up and extension of the company's existing proprietary database of all the nature that they own. Base data, introduced in June 2025, that already holds 10 billion genes drawn from 1 million newly discovered species, more than 10 times the size of all public genomic resources combined. The Trillion Gene Atlas is a plan to scale that by another factor of 100 in 2 phases of roughly 10 times each. Each scaling phase will take about a year, Gower said, including a stage of data gathering and generation and an assessment stage to incorporate learnings before the next scaling phase. We're scaling. Say scaling one more time. I double dare you, Mickey Ficky. Has that been a word of the year yet, James? Editing this article drove me insane. It says scaling about 100 times. We're scaling. The local scientists in 31 partner countries process samples on site, extracting DNA within an hour of collection to preserve its native state before shipping the stable DNA itself. PacBio is doing the sequencing at its facility in Menlo Park, blah, 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 blah. From there, of course, the good folks at Anthropic come in to help. And in January, Basecamp published Eden, because they like to name their satanic things after God's nature, a 28 billion parameter foundation model trained on the 10 billion gene version of base data, and the results of the Trillion Gene Atlas will be incorporated into new versions of Eden. James, we will include links to basecamp-research.com, the Trillion Gene Atlas. But what does the Svalbard Seed Vault have to say about all this, James?
Very perceptive question, James. And yes, for people who don't actually remember the Svalbard Seed Vault, they can check out my episode 489 on the secret of the Doomsday Seed Vault that's based on a biotech giants and digital and GMO Doomsday essay from Reportage Essays on the New World Order, which is all about that seed vault carved out of the icy tundra in the Arctic that is there to preserve the genetic history of the plant species of the world. And so they ship these genetic heirloom seeds off to this Doomsday Seed Vault that's been created out of the goodness and kindness of the heart of the Norwegian government and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and all the usual players in that system. Why? Well, maybe they know something about some sort of, I don't know, GMO doomsday that is coming for humanity and how we might need to repopulate the Earth at some point in the future. And similarly to that first story and the tax cattle story informing the WHO story, I think the Doomsday Seed Vault might inform this story. Because again, what is it about mapping out all of these genes and training AI on them? Well, they are experimenting with synthetic biology. And as I've talked about magic words before, you need the magic words to unlock the search engines so that you can find out more information about things. The magic words for this might be synthetic biology. Start looking that up. Of course, they are trying to figure out how to create completely synthetic life forms from scratch in the laboratory that have never existed in nature and never will unless we start unlocking the genome and figuring out how to put things together. And well, that's a lot of work. So let's let the AI do it. What could go wrong? Well, anyway, unfortunately, we might see that in the near future if these genetic tinkerers get their way. But that's exactly why we might need some sort of GMO doomsday seed vault, and maybe a sperm vault or something for preserving natural, authentic, organic substrate human species.
James, this was a alternative media conspiracy theorists. We've got our bugaboos, we've got our favorite topics, we've got our stories that we really have hit hard over the last couple of decades. The Svalbard Seed Vault was huge, I think, for indie media, alternative media. So what does it say when you're updating any kind of software? Hey, make sure you back everything up in case this completely ruins your life. That's why they're doing this. They're psychopaths and sociopaths, but I don't think they're stupid. They do know that they are unleashing unstoppable chimeras, and just like in the experiments, down here in the Southwest 100 years ago, it's possible we might start an explosion that destroys the whole planet, or what they're doing at CERN. We might open up a Stargate that eats the whole galaxy. So they're doing these backups to make sure, hey, in case we wreck everything, in case all of these transgenic monstrosities that we let go on purpose, that places like the late not great Monsanto could sue you for having blown into your farmland, they're making a backup. We do have some relateds that go all along with this, designing AI programmable therapeutics with the Eden family of foundation models, and of course, Anthropic, the most disruptive company in the world. James, I was making my notes earlier about how the synthoids, that Cobra Commander made. And in important old world last week news, we always try and be 20 minutes into the future, but sometimes stories get past us, and I think this is important enough to take a glance at. Meta and YouTube found negligent in landmark social media addiction case. Grabbing this from the New York Times, so you know this is big news. The social media company Meta, which of course owns Instagram, Facebook, all that, and the video streaming service YouTube, which is owned of course by Alphabet, harmed a young user with design features that were addictive and led her to mental health distress, a jury found in a landmark decision that could open social media companies to tons more lawsuits over users' well-being. Meta must pay $4.2 million in combined compensatory and punitive damages, and YouTube must pay $1.8 million. This bellwether case, which was brought by a now 20-year-old woman identified as KGM, had accused social media companies of creating products as addictive as cigarettes or digital casinos, because she's not old enough to have actually gone to a real casino. Citing features like infinite scroll and algorithmic recommendations, KGM sued Meta, which, as I said, owns Instagram and Facebook, and Google's YouTube, claiming they led to anxiety and depression. And then the psych meds they got put on, only gave him more suicidal ideation. The verdict in KGM's case, one of thousands of lawsuits filed by teenagers, school districts, and state attorneys general against Meta, YouTube, TikTok, Snap, and which, of course, a major win for the plaintiffs. The finding validates a novel legal theory, meaning, damn, we never tried this before, that social media sites or apps can cause personal injury. It is likely to factor into similar cases expected to go to trial this year, which could expose the internet giants to further financial damages and force changes to their products. I guess the parents were probably too busy on their own slave phones to help. And again, this is one of my bugaboos. This is a 20-year-old adult. To me, these are the same types that kill the Reiners and the Menendez parents. And so tech has actually been sued so much the last few months, it is actually hard to keep track. Meta settles, search, Meta settles, $1.4 billion biometric settlement, $190 million shareholder settlement, $50 million California privacy settlement, and $8 billion shareholder trial resolution. None of these settlements involve direct, dirty, gross cash payouts to individual users. The funds generally go to state governments, the company itself, or cover legal and compliance costs. Middleman says thank you. Meta consistently states that it does not admit wrongdoing in these agreements, settling instead for the sake of resolution. So it means nothing but making it rain for states and lawyersteins. California and Texas, I don't think, are real ideals for freedom either. And the good news, I mean, I can now sue all those car companies for killing a bunch of my friends. Search, Google settles. March 2026. You have to be that specific. In March 2026, Google settled multiple high-profile legal and regulatory issues. Android privacy for $135 million. Google Assistant privacy for $68 million. The Epic Games antitrust and also search privacy. I covered this a lot on my Tuesday morning show. Meta, Google lose U.S. case over social media harm to kids. God, James, next you'll tell me they were forced to learn how to tell time.
I'm just impressed at privacy. Pretty soon you're going to be talking about rows between people and talking about aluminium.
I don't even have my Morrissey shirt on.
You could be an honorary Brit. So, yeah, the social media addiction verdict here, clearly, what does it mean? $6 million is not even a drop in the bucket for these kinds of gigantic behemoths. But it does open the door for the class action lawsuits that, hey, ka-ching, ka-ching, mostly for the lawyers and, for big companies as well. I suppose there could be down the line something actually approaching a real monetary punishment here, but that's not the point. What is the point of this? I think it was best expressed in a recent Off Guardian article on Quick Take, the social media addiction verdict, in which it says, consider just how many countries around the world have either introduced social media bans or are considering introducing them. It is now a matter of official record that social media companies are responsible for harming children, not inattentive parents, not any other factor. It's the companies. And that means social media bans and the universal digital ID/age verification measures required to enforce them are suddenly a moral duty to protect teenagers. They're a public health measure. And we know how much state overreach people will permit in the name of public health. So we expect California proposed social media restrictions to fly through the legislature on the back of this verdict, and other states will absolutely follow, and it's unlikely to be limited to state level. Yes, this is what this is about. It's opening the door for the government to get what it wants, or the people controlling the strings of government, which is the digital ID age verification structure. The age verification structure, which is the thin edge of the wedge, the way to introduce the digital ID architecture. It all keeps going back to the same thing, doesn't it? It's almost like there is an agenda, and they're just using absolutely every single tactic in the book to push that agenda. Well, anyway, make of that what you will, everyone.
These poor kids are the same ones they give puberty blockers and a bunch of MAGA jabs to. So, boo-hoo for them. And I've made this comparison a million times. It is like the tobacco industry, which we already mentioned early in this episode. They run the exploitation and pimp it as much as they can and make as much trillions out of it as they can until it all runs out. And then they flip a switch and they run the prohibition, which is what they have done to cigarettes here in the States. I'm not saying good or bad, but you pretty much have to be 21 years old now to smoke a cigarette, and you may as well walk down the street with 3 heads and be a complete weirdo. The flip side of that is, of course, bad economic times. You will generally see an upswing in cigarette smoking because it's an appetite suppressant, among lots of other things. But it is the opposite now of what they've done with marijuana. They lord it over, again, the prohibition as much as they can until they get to flip the switch, and oh man, there's weed stores everywhere. All you got to do is give them your state ID and they don't take cash. Interesting parallel, I think, James, with these cases. Same time, same timeline, and really, to me, it's in a lot of similar ways. The Live Nation Ticketmaster trials. Long story short, the company that runs all the concerts, Live Nation, is the same company that sells all the tickets to all their concerts, Ticketmaster. It's kind of the reason why they broke up the studio system 100 years ago, because Paramount owned the movies and the theaters where they showed those movies. States continue antitrust case against Live Nation Ticketmaster after the DOJ settles. So much, very much interesting going on under the sun, and that's why we try and bring it to you here on New World Next Week. I saw a comment on last week's show from somebody in high school. I'm rocking my Fayetteville Pirates baseball hoodie right now. I just found the Corbett Report a couple months ago when I saw James Corbett on a podcast. I found it on Spotify and started an episode on the way to work. I heard James Evan Pilato introduce himself, and I was like, holy ish, I went to school with that guy. It's great to see someone from my small hometown doing actual journalism, searching for truth, and poking the ruling class in the eye. Great content. Thanks, guys. Man. Now, what's funny, James, and this may shed a little more light, I have replied twice, breaking my long-standing I never comment on New World Next Week videos. The only other time I ever commented was to say, James is alive, he's okay, he was not killed in Fukushima. I have replied twice, and each time I've gone back to check and see if it's there, my comment isn't there. So I'll say it right here. Dude, email me, james@MediaMonarchy.com. And there was another comment last week that asked, is that other guy on drugs? I'm only on a little LSD. Love of successful determination. NewWorldNextWeek.com for logo tees and USBs, P.O. Box for memberships and donations, and this exclusive audio on Monarchy Radio Thursday mornings. James, that is New World Next Week 625 in the can, buddy.
I love successful determination too, James. So let's all share a little LSD.
That's all.
In this happy episode of New World Next Week. Anyway.
Oh, good grief. There it is, dude.
Good grief. All right. Well, thank you for that. And deprogramming note, we will not be around next week. So there will be a New World next week in 2 weeks. And everyone can stay on the edge of their seat for that. But in the meantime, in between time, thank you for doing what you do, James. Keep at it.
Thanks so much, buddy. You too. Take care.